Welcome back to Readings and Commentary with Insane Sam. These are readings from pieces of literature, history, philosophy, poetry, anything with the written word that I like that I think you might like too. I'm going to put them all in context so you know why I like them, and maybe you'll understand them a little better that way. Today's reading's from Robert Service. Robert Service was a Scotland-born man who moved to North America and became a bank clerk in British Columbia. He wound up traveling all through the Yukon, and even though he wasn't from the Yukon, he wrote startlingly good poetry about the Yukon life and the gold rush out there and stuff like that. His first two were the shooting of Dan McGrew and the cremation of Sam McGee, but I'm not going to give you either one of those today. I'm going to give you the Ballad of Blasphemous Bill. It's my favorite one by far, and here it comes. It takes a little while to get through, and I might bumble through it a bit, but it's worth waiting till the end. I think you'll like it. Here we go. The Ballad of Blasphemous Bill. I took a contract to bury the body of Blasphemous Bill Mackay, whenever, wherever, or whatsoever the manner of death he die. Whether he die in the light of day or under the peak-faced moon, in cabin or dance hall, camp or dive, mucklucks or patent shoon. On velvet tundra or virgin peak by glacier drift or draw, in muskeg hollow or canyon gloom by avalanche fang or claw. By battle, murder, or sudden wealth, by pestilence, hooch, or lead, I swore on the book I'd follow and look till I found my tombless dead. For Bill was a dainty kind of cuss, and his mind was mighty sot on a dinky patch with flowers and grass in a civilized boneyard lot. And where he died or how he died, it didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good Chickaku coin, which the very same I blowed that very night down in the tenderloin. Then I picked up a 3-foot slab of pine. Here lies poor Bill Mackay. And I hung it up on my cabin wall, and I waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and at last one day came a squaw with a story strange of a long deserted line of traps way back of the Bighorn Range, of a little hut by the Great Divide and a white man stiff and still lying there by his lonesome self, and I figured it must be Bill. So I thought of the contract I'd made with him, and I took down from the shelf the swell black box with a silver plate he'd picked out for himself, and I packed it full of grub and hooch and slung it on the sleigh. That I harnessed up my team of dogs. I was off at the dawn of day. You know what it's like in the Yukon wild when it's 69 below, when the ice worms wriggle their purple heads through the crust of the pale blue snow, when the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the wood, and the icicles hang down like tusks under the parka hood, when the stovepipe smoke breaks sudden off and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a bit of steel burns like a red-hot spit, when the mercury is a frozen ball and the frost fiend stalks to kill. Well, it was just like that the day when I set out to look for Bill. Oh, the awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand as I blundered blind with a trail to find through that blank and bitter land, half dazed, half crazed in the winter wild with its grim heart-breaking woes and the ruthless strife for a grip on life that only the sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, river and peak and plain, past like a dream I slept to lose and I waked to dream again. River and plain and mighty peak, and who could stand unawed? As their summits blazed, he could stand undazed at the foot of the throne of God. North, I north through a land accursed, shunned by the scouring brutes, and all I heard was my own harsh word and the whine of the Malamutes. Till at last I came to a cabin squat built in the side of the hill, and I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death lay Bill. Ice, white ice in a winding sheet, sheathing each smoke-grimed wall. Ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice gleaming over all. Sparkling ice on the dead man's chest, glittering ice in his hair, ice in his fingers, ice in his heart, ice in his glassy stare. Hard as a log and trussed like a frog with his arms and legs outspread, I gazed at the coffin I'd brought for him, and I gazed at the gruesome dead. And at last I spoke. Bill liked his joke, but still galled darn his eyes. A man ought to consider his mates in the way he goes and dies. Have you ever stood in an Arctic hut in a shadow of the pole with a little coffin 6x3 and a grief you can't control? Have you ever sat by a frozen corpse that looks at you with a grin and that seems to say, you may try all day, but you'll never jam me in? Now, I'm not a man of the quitting kind, but I never felt so blue as I sat there gazing at that stiff and studying what I'd do. Then I rose and kicked off the husky dogs that were nosing round about, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove and started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and I thawed for 13 days, but it didn't seem no good. His arms and legs stuck out like pegs as if they was made of wood. Till at last I said, it ain't no use. He's too hard to thaw. He's obstinate. He won't lie straight. So I guess I gotta saw. So I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs, and I laid him snug and straight in the little coffin he'd picked himself with a dinky silver plate. And I came nigh near to shedding a tear as I nailed him safely down. Then I stowed him away in my Youkon sleigh, and I started back to town. So I buried him as the contract was, in a narrow grave and deep, and there he's waiting the great cleanup with the judgment sluice head sweep. And I smoke my pipe and I meditate in the light of the midnight sun. And sometimes I wonder if they was the awful things I'd done. And as I sit and the parson talks, expounding of the law, I often think of poor old Bill and how hard he was to thaw. How hard he was to saw. Sorry about that. So that is typical Robert Service. I'm going to give you two more Robert Service ones for the rest of this week's readings, and they're a little more majestic, but that's an awfully fun one. Please subscribe, get your friends to subscribe, and with that, Insane Sam out.